And it's live! Victory! We got cooperation. This is excellent. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the stream. This is a resurrection of a very old series of Witch on Witch. I am joined by the and lovely Georgia Liberty, also known as the Wiccan Conservative, and we're going to be getting into the Earth chakras today. So say hello, Georgia. Introduce yourself to the people, because it's been a while, and there's been more people who've come this way.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful, wonderful. Hello, and thank you so much for having me, Brigantia. It has been a very, very long time. We are longtime acquaintances. We used to run this series on every Wednesday that we could possibly do it because we thought it was a very interesting concept to hear two witches kind of come together on witchy topics and magical things and really hammer home some outside of the box perspectives that people aren't usually used to hearing. So it's always more interesting when you have a conversation with another individual. And I thought that this is perfect because we did a conversation, if you've been here for a while, about the ley lines and sort of earth chakras when we did our pyramid talk on my channel. So I absolutely 100% wanted to get back into it.
I was so excited you agreed because, you know, we kind of only scratched the surface ahead of time with that one. And ever since then, it's been kind of rolling in the back of my mind. Like, okay, this is part of a bigger structure. But you know how it is. Sometimes you don't always have the bandwidth to go deep and dive into this. But today we are going to fix that. So I see we've got 4 people with us. Hello, gang. Say hello to us in the live chat. If you are on YouTube, I will definitely see you for sure. I'm not sure if we get deliveries from Rumble or Twitter as far as comments go, but if we see you, we will absolutely make you part of the conversation. Now, I thought I wasn't going to do a whole lot of slides, but I thought maybe we needed at least a little bit of a base reference. And if we want to see pictures of the various locations we'll be talking about today, well, I found us some pretty pictures. Now, let's see if we can get this. Okay. So I created
map.
Isn't it a nice map? It gives you the whole thing, but in a manageable thing. Oh, and we have our first commenter. Hello to Eric Anderson. Welcome to the live stream. Glad to have you here. Yeah, but I wanted to give everyone an overview because you say earth chakras, and I don't think everyone necessarily has a good frame of reference, and they're scattered all over the place. So
they're like, what? Earth got them too?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that thing we're first taught in witchcraft, you know, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. This is just another application of that. So just like I did in my Wicca 101, when I talked about the human energy system, how we have the chakras that function like organs, the meridians that function like veins or the nervous system, and then the aura that's kind of like the skin, the earth has the exact same thing going on. Not going to go into everything I wrote on that, but if anyone's watching, they want to take a screenshot, you have a cheat sheet available to you.
Resources and references will be available. And if anybody wants extra, DM us.
Yes, we did a lot of preparation for this, and I think this topic, we've done the most pre-show consultation back and forth that we've ever done, because in the old days, I mean, it wasn't uncommon for one of us to say, I thought about this, do you want to talk about it? Sure. And then we did not communicate about it at all for a week until the live stream. So this was a very different experience for us.
And lots of time to prepare, which, you know, like I said, this is a long time coming because we scratched the surface and got interested in it. And I don't know about you, but I've dabbled ever since and really played with this topic in my head because of, you know, the intricate relationship between human beings and the earth.
Oh, yeah. And that's what I love about these maps, is because they, with not the, bless the color codes, because we're accustomed to seeing the chakra color codes. I found that image on Pinterest, you know, full credit to whoever created it. People, freaking label your stuff. That would be very helpful to making sure people got credit where credit was due. But we understand that. We understand that things come up through the root, then they go into the sacral where we have, you know, all the reproductive stuff and the creative stuff, then up to the will, then up to the heart, and then the voice voice and the throat and the third eye and then the crown. We get that. So being able to see that all marked out on the earth is really cool. And gosh, it's so hard to go into this. I mean, we both, when we were doing our research, I feel like we came into this subject almost sideways, because a lot of our reference materials, which I listed a lot of them in the description box if anyone's interested, it felt like it was a lot of repetition, and so
Okay.
we ended up
Basic
doing a lot of
Becky.
stuff. Yeah.
Basic Becky information. One of the things that I think is the most frustrating when you go looking for your own information, as somebody who advocates for that quite frequently, is
Mhm.
when you come across the same things that you're already generally aware of.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I knew that. I've read that 5 times now. How do we get beyond that?
Right. Well, we're going to do our best with that today. And I've got references to, the seven major chakras that correspond with what's in our body, plus the additional three that Robert Kuhn talked about, and the elemental gateways. And I guess I will just start with this map, because you see not only where the chakras are in the world, and they're spread out pretty good, but you also see where the wheels are, and they're all associated with the elements. But then also you see the two huge, big jugular artery ley lines that he describes as, the two great dragons spirits. One's masculine, one's feminine, and I thought this feels like very basic witchcraft 101. You have the masculine and feminine polaric energies, you have the four elements, and then you have energy hotspots. When you saw this coming together, did you feel just a little bit extra vindicated in your belief structure?
I always find myself vindicated in nature, and one of the major things that struck out to me is what I pointed out to you when we first saw these maps together. So
Hmm.
everybody's rather familiar with the chakras in relation to the human body. Now, when I looked at the world map, it kind of looked funky to me. So everybody's probably wondering why it's flipped to its side. And I was thinking, Brigantia, if you look at this map, does it or does it not kind of look as if a human were curled up in a fetal position
Hmm.
across this map, and just kind of like what we know about the universe expanding and how a lot of these sites are created, geophragmatically speaking? It actually makes a lot of sense to me to think of a person curled up in a fetal position, and then slowly kind of spreading out across the map here. And as you said, with the masculine and feminine lines intertwining, to me that just kind of accentuates the necessity of both existing in this. So whether you picture this body, in a masculine or feminine form, that's reflective of how you perceive that information, but
Hmm.
it does mirror both, in my opinion.
Well, for me, I saw both of them almost in unity. If we oh, and hello, by the way, to Olympic grade lurker and to
I
Amanda
just
Cox,
noticed.
aka
Mhm.
Puritan View. Welcome, welcome. One of the things is the longer I look at this almost infinity loop of the two major ley lines, the more I can almost feel that serpentine motion in between everything, and it feels like these two, the masculine and the feminine serpents just doing this dance together and undulating together, and it is that interplay that literally created the universe, at least as far as our beliefs go, and seeing that reflected in every level, from the pattern of the chakras laid out, to how human life is conceived. I mean, it's an extraordinary, we can't get anywhere without that dance, and that's something that my brain keeps coming back to. It hasn't fully matured as far as where it's leading me to, but it's continuously working on there.
Well, here's another fun fact for you. If anybody watches the wind and weather patterns, we were talking about this right before the stream,
Hmm.
but I thought that this was also relevant to bring up, is the wind and the currents actually flow in a generalized direction that mirrors this pattern as well. So as you're
Yeah.
watching weather come across, the globe in, the totality of, the weather patterns are moving in relation to this as well. So take that for what it's worth when we're talking about, everything kind of playing off of each other in this grand scheme of things that is quite intertwined.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, how often have we delivered some sermon along the lines of, the physical and the spiritual are one. They are reflections of each other, and there is no real division. The only division is in our perception, and this feels like more of that. Now, we can
And
come, yeah,
validation.
yeah, validation, absolutely. Well, we can come back to any of these slides at any time, so just let me know as I'm hopping around. I wanted to show
And the
off
chat.
also. Yes, and the chat as well. If you need to see another reference, let me know. But I wanted to bring up this grid because that isn't so much showing the chakras as it is showing known kind of energy hotspots and just kind of this grid along the world. And I thought that's something also to keep in mind in the back of our minds because the chakras, it isn't just this isolated thing. We can't talk about the chakras without also involving, the
Ley
major
lines.
the major ley lines and the little vortices. Oh, I didn't include it in the presentation, but I found this list of 10 vile vortices, which apparently are the little triangle energy hotspots that are known for not very friendly things happen, like the Bermuda Triangle and things like that. And I thought, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that label's felt a little personal to me, but yeah, but I
We're
wanted
always
people.
attacked.
Yeah, I wanted to have people have that in their heads. And I also wanted to remind us that we are not without ley lines in this country, because when I first started studying, I thought, oh, all the cool stuff is in England and Europe and Asia and pretty much everywhere but here. So this little map was a hell of a reality check. And I mean, just how do you feel when you look at this? Do you suddenly feel like we are tied back into the web?
I never really thought that we were outside of the web, although I do have to agree with you. When a lot of people go looking for this type of thing, they're brought to the attention of the big ones, right? Like
Hmm.
we'll touch on all of the locations a little bit later on, so I don't want to get bogged down in that right now. But
Right.
what is interesting about the ley lines and the energy movement and hotspots of these particular areas is you notice that in a lot of these instances, people were naturally gravitating there before they became aware of this. They
Hmm.
were populating these areas and creating a space in which they wanted to inhabit for multiple reasons. I mean, you've got the Bermuda Triangle area down there outside of Florida, which is, all of your island activity. And then you've got the border activity. I'm not exactly sure what state that's, either Arizona or New Mexico down there
Yeah.
by actual Mexico. And that's a super hot spot. But it's also two areas that have generally warm climates as
Hmm.
well. So when you're talking about hotbed of activity, that makes a lot of sense. Moving further north, they kind of get smaller and how
Oh
they're not
yeah.
quite as active. Could it be because of a change in the geoformations or
Mhm.
the temperature even? It seems to be very, again, interlocking with how we as society have decided to spread ourselves out too.
Another factor that I think might impact that is even the mineral content of the land itself. I was watching something earlier this morning, and the lady was talking about Stonehenge, and she said about how the rocks there have a very high quartz content, and I thought, well, quartz is nature's little conductor. So it would be very interesting. I don't know where we would begin to find the information, but to see just how prevalent quartz is on some of these, little hotspots, and also how prevalent they are on these veins.
It's funny that you should ask that because I went ahead and I wanted to get a really good idea of what these hotspots were made of. So I do have pulled up some references here, and if you go to like Bing or whatever type of search engine that you like, Stonehenge is actually credited as being Sarsen stones and blue stones. So sandstones are Sarsen stones found in England, and
Mhm.
blue stones are a type of dolomite. So that's in addition to the quartz. When you think about, like you said, the minerals themselves reacting not only with the energy in the area, think about how it reacts to the individual visiting that area.
Oh yeah, because we're not separate from all this. Our energies are having interplays, and that's actually a question we brought up in our pre-show consultation of, to what degree do we influence this, or are we influenced by it? What's the exchange there? And I haven't arrived at a conclusion. I don't know if you have, but it seems like something that we need to study. We need
I
to be
have a
asking the question.
question for you. I've heard this now referred to in two separate ways.
Mhm,
One site referred to the chakras as a PowerPoint, and
mhm,
the other kind of referred to it as an energy vortex. Now, when I think of vortex, I'm more inclined to go with that definition for the simple
mhm,
fact that you're talking about a three-dimensional spiritual plane that
mhm.
has the volume and mass and density and so on. So you're the chakras that you work on in your human body can rotate
Oh yeah.
for the health and for the kind of vibrancy of the chakra. So to think of it as a vortex, that reminds me that the energy is always moving. But when
Mhm.
I think of power points, I think of just like emanating power. Is there a difference to you, and would you distinguish it in a certain way?
Well, with a point, I suppose with a point, I would think of something that might be a little bit more pulsing, but not
Mm,
necessarily in motion. But with a vortex, I'm picturing essentially an energy tornado or an energy hurricane, something that's
right.
a lot more vibrant. So I like yourself. I do like the term vortex as kind of a general classification a lot better because it's a better description of what the energy does. Now, if someone was using, I don't know yeah, with anyone else, I don't know that I would harp on it just because I would get what they meant, unless unless it was
But it's
unless
me.
it, yeah, well, because we can do this and it works out well, and also it would depend upon if it was in more of a classroom setting in which I was trying to convey something very specific, and just what the relationship was, but yeah, I do. Yeah, vortex does all around seem like a much better word because one thing when we were reading, particularly in Kuhn's, he would talk about depending upon the state of being, astrological configurations, and the general health of the area. A lot of these chakras they can expand, they can contract, they can rotate, and sometimes, especially once we get into some of the energetic wheels, they can go clockwise, they can go counterclockwise depending upon what's going on and where and why and how and what generally needs to happen. So it's a lot more fluid. And even I was thinking about with the ley lines, just like our veins can expand or contract depending upon the volume of our blood flow, they can get blocked if they're unhealthy. I'm thinking if we as we go on studying this, and by we I mean the next 500 years of worth of pagans, I it would
Humans.
not yeah, it would not surprise me if we also kind of discovered that everything is a lot more dynamic and a lot less fixed than what we would have initially thought. Let me
Agreed.
see. So, since I think we've got everyone warmed up pretty good, do you want to share your first impressions about our root of the world, our homegrown? I'm counting it because we're in the same freaking country. Doesn't always
Right.
feel like it, but we are still legally in the same country as California. About our own our national chakra, our root chakra. Just I want to hear your observations and we can compare notes. Gang, this is where it's probably going to get a little bit more disorganized because, again, we are still feeling our way through this subject, but I want to give you first crack at it.
Well, it's interesting, right? So, they credit Mount Shasta in most of the readings with being this root, and
Hmm.
we know that the root is the base of the spine. It's associated with the element of earth, and it actually connects back to humanity. And humans work with it when they're grounding, when you need to get a solid base, right? So at first glance, you would typically think like, okay, a mountain, like, oh, that's got to be perfect for grounding, representing the, earth element, and so on and so forth. But then you kind of find out that it is a stratovolcano,
Yeah.
which has a very unique evidence of debris flow and streams. So it's like, okay, well, that's super cool. And that shows you how one element can influence another,
Oh,
and
yeah.
what could potentially be drawn from that energy. But Harmonious suggested to reverse it and suggest the Ulu Rock in Australia as
Mhm.
being the root in their assessment of the chakras. And I thought, so what is that rock made out of? Well, the interesting thing about that particular rock, and one of our very first contestation points that I tend to put myself into debate about, is that
Mhm.
rock is formed by actually conforming rock on top of
Mhm.
each other, which is much more reminiscent, in my opinion, of like a grounding energy and like
Yeah,
being
kind of
connected to the earth. Right.
layering. Yeah.
Right. So I was like, well, wow. In this very first chakra, we
I know.
have
There's questions.
we have questions, and I wasn't expecting that. So that was my first impression.
One of the things I thought about is that, once I got to the bit about volcano, I'm like, well, okay, I guess when we don't feel necessarily really grounded in our root chakra, so I guess we're in good company with the earth. It can also be unsettled and have these little volcanic eruptions. And another interesting thing that I thought about it, just to kind of present the case for this one, since you're also bringing in, the other one, um, is how Kuhn was saying about how this is the entry point for, I think it was the masculine dragon ley line into the earth. And then that got me to thinking, okay, gang, if you have kids, this is their time to shoosh them out of the room. Because if you're not prepared to give them the birds and the bees explanation, I don't want to be the reason why you had to go into that before you wanted to. So, yeah, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So with the volcanic, that made sense to me with the male being the progenitor and the explosion of lava being, the explosion of the male climax with the sperm and everything else. So for me, that made sense, and that kind of really resonated, even with essentially the energetic, and in the case of volcano, the violence of that kind of eruption, just because that is essentially the masculine contribution to creation itself. So that was an interesting link for me, especially once we get into the sacral chakra, which is the Lake Titicaca, where you have both of those ley lines, major ones, intersecting. And I feel like, okay, so the root came into the womb of the world, and now we're getting creation started. So that symbolism worked for me. But now with the Uluru rock, that also gives me something else to kind of think about, as we sort all of this out, because that's a pretty reasonable argument about why that would be a very plausible link to the earth element. And before I get too distracted, Olympic Great Lurker asks, link to the Layline map. I don't know if I have a link to the Layline map itself. I don't remember, but I do. Most of the images I found on Pinterest. So just type that in and that'll get it to you, or you can take a screenshot.
Earthchakras.org, I believe, has a very similar one as well. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Robert Kuhn site, and
Yeah.
there's multiple pages there. You will find everything.
Oh yeah. There's lots of stuff for sure.
But
But
I love that idea, and that has been, I think, the lasting concept that has really put this at the root of the
Mhm.
root, right? Because it
Right.
does hang in balance so well. And I didn't get the opportunity to see Harmonious's Layline map to see if
Mhm.
that would uh, kind of line up differently than say Kuhn's map did, but like you said, it does have its purpose no matter which way you slice it.
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about kind of the function of the root chakra, whether it's here or whether it's in Uluru. Either way, the root chakra has a particular purpose. about foundational strength, stability, even stress responses. That's kind of your general keywords that you'll find whenever the root chakra gets mentioned. So
I found also, these keywords, in my opinion, dependency, stability,
yeah.
ambition, and survival, which
Hmm.
we tend to look over a lot when we talk about the necessity of balancing the root, because at
Hmm.
the core of the conversation and the core of yourself and your own survival will be the ability to survive. So if you're
Right.
not in a stable position and you're kind of off kilter and off balance, there's a good chance that you're not going to be dependable, that you're not going to
Yeah.
be, able to move ambitiously and survive. So, that's not only a symbolic measure of the, either way you slice it, this giant formation of rock, whether that be a bedrock on top of bedrock
Hmm.
or a physical manifestation of life. This is where it starts. This is the, aptly named root. And not to be, beating a dead horse or anything like that, but the foundation of your house is the
Yeah.
most important, aspect of building. So why wouldn't we speak about creating a good foundation at the core, with these types of thought processes, or bringing this spiritual element into it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that principle, it scales up, be whether we're talking about individuals or entire civilizations. We have so much controversy. We're not getting into politics today, guys. Don't worry. But we have a lot of controversy in our country, and a lot of it is arguments over the foundation, people's opinions of it, real or imagined, because we're just tossing that out there. Not everything that people say or perceive is in alignment with reality. Um,
No.
but there's a lot of controversy, and the something that's just been drumming in my head for months is just the foundation is cracked, and I have just felt like this push of of
And that's
of
on a world level, not just our
yeah,
country, which,
yeah.
if Shasta is indeed what you feel to be the root, and
Hmm.
again, a lot of this will come from what your feelings are in these places, but if that
Yeah,
is the
again, this is
the
theory, this is
root,
theory, gang.
if this is the root, then that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and everything's disrupted right now, and it's because a lot of shaky, faulty foundations are just being exposed, and you can't ignore that. I mean, maybe you could do a little patchwork here and there, but there comes a point, no matter what scale we're talking about, or whether it's the Earth or conscious beings, there comes a point where you have to actually deal with that foundation.
And red,
So yeah, yeah.
such a big, bright color. The fact that this,
Hmm.
in the center, what always draws your attention but the color red?
Yeah.
Good berries to eat, or poisonous animals, or
Hmm.
when you're reading a sign, this is the
Blood.
color. So I didn't want to go there, but you went there. That's cool.
I did.
And that's it, because again, your foundation is going to be your blood, your DNA, what runs through you. So on the grand scheme of things, I mean, keep adding checklist. I've got all
Yeah.
this together.
Oh, but it does kind of impress upon me that we should probably be working with our chakras, particularly our root chakras, a lot more, and that the more upheaval we have within ourselves or our lives or our broader society, the more we need to be working on these root chakras, because and I think this is what accounts for so much stagnation, just because we have not been attending to the foundations. Oh, we have a comment. We have a
Oh.
comment from Wolf, who says gravitational anomaly maps are worth a look too. I was looking into magnetic variability on the compass as part of a yachting course, but putting to use on land was an eye opener. I didn't even think about that. Thank you for that suggestion. I need
Mm.
to add that to the research pile, because I can see how that would absolutely be very useful in this context as well.
Yeah, and I don't think women think a lot about the electromagnetic waves, because ours are kind of like so blocked by the lead in our heads, right? To not be privy to that. That's what we're really, up against when we talk about navigational tools and so on and so forth. But
Well, and then let's face it, because of our brains, we have as that seminar a couple of years ago talked about our brains, everything is connected to everything. That
yeah.
means we have a lot of interference and we have a lot of stuff to organize because we're getting fed in so much data all the freaking time. So there's a reason for our shortcomings.
And
I'll just
rooting
say that.
helps. Rooting
Yes.
helps.
And
And to just to touch base back to
mhm,
the idea of rooting, now that
mhm,
it's crossed my mind, isn't it funny, also how it kind of brings about a feminine energy because of
mhm,
nesting ideas
right.
and homemaking skills and those types of activities, guys. I don't know if you know this or not, but that's necessary to survival. So throw that
Yeah.
one on the table.
Oh, can we tell that we've had arguments about our husbands about why things need to function and be pretty? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
We
All
got
right.
good.
Alrighty, so let's talk about the womb of the world next, which the only source I found always put this at Lake Titicaca. Is that consistent with your findings as well?
The
Okay,
only
so
one.
people aren't arguing about that. The only one.
Mm-mm.
And
No,
it's
the only
interesting because what I find interesting is that with both the root chakra and the sacral, and with the solar plexus, which is where I usually find the Iluru, they all have these really strong creation myths. Our people came out of this mountain, or they arose out of this lake, or they were made out of these
they were
rocks. I'm
swamp
like,
monsters.
yeah, but it's all has everything very much to do with creation, and I found that significant. And again, it's one of those little details I've made. It's in my notebook. I've put a pen in it. I'm bringing it to everyone's attention, but the meditation on this point is not complete.
It's so fascinating. Again, after I got on the idea of what are the elemental components that we're dealing with these sites, and what could potentially make them feel the way that they feel, because
Mhm,
everybody could talk about the way that these points on the
mhm,
map makes them feel and what they
mhm.
associate it with, and we're doing a lot of that right now.
Oh yeah,
But when I went looking, especially in the Lake Titicaca, you're talking about tectonic and geomorphic processes. So they're uplifting and they're stretching this earth process, which again would kind of, you know, explain how the basins are created and how water gets into them. But there's also an interesting fact about the alkalinity of the lake itself, and what the saline solution is, and salt. So I know a lot of people don't think about how integral salt is to survival, but anybody that has done like just a basic general search as to why we iodize salt, and why these chemicals are integral, even though they sound antithetical to survival, why we still have trace amounts of these things in our blood. And when you think about those types of things in relation to human survival, it opens your eyes as to like medical practitioners, the
yeah,
types of treatments and procedures that are given to you in hospital settings, or even just folky type of home remedies and things like that. These things make sense because you go back to, again, how the earth was formed, what they're associating that with, and what parts of humanity still exist in these areas, or rather what part of those areas still exist in the humans, even though we're so far away from
yeah.
these original places.
So far away, but still, they're intimately connected. I mean, it's like trying to separate ourselves from our own DNA. Good luck with that. We have the components that we have. And speaking of structure, I came across an interesting fact when I was doing the research. is that apparently at some point the water level in this was much lower. A temple beneath the surface of this lake that is estimated between 1,000 and 1,500 years old. And also, in addition to that temple, you also have Sun Island and Moon Island, where rituals are still being carried out to that day. So again, it's that other. Oh, look, we've got the masculine and the feminine. Again, we have this womb of the world coming together for creation. Again, we have this temple in the middle of the lake, probably in between the moon and the sun island. Probably, that point of conception. I mean, isn't that interesting how all of this is really coming together?
Mm-hmm. And again, going back to the formation, if you think about what it means to expand and contract, guys, isn't that kind of like sex in and out? And then boom, there's a baby. So, a very symbolic process that the earth is partaking in, and maybe not even necessarily that we can observe on we're not watching a porno here, but it is, kind of evident just by the way things crop up the way they do.
Yeah, I mean, that interplay of energies is always present. I mean, that's one of the reasons why witchcraft keeps having enduring relevance. It's because it is earth-based spirituality in the most basic
Magical,
meaning of the term,
for lack of a better word.
Yeah, most magical. But that's why it keeps drawing upon all of these metaphors for fertility, because it is all about those creative processes, however they are manifesting, and that's also is interesting because not only is this a lake, and also considered the womb, and with the waters of the womb and everything else, and the water element, that also brings in this idea of its association with attaining emotional balance as well as creativity. And also one of the key words that I came up across during research was self-respect. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because right now, people's attitudes towards physical intimacy and those relationships, and what they're bringing to the relationship as a partner, and what they're expecting as a partner, self-respect and or any kind of even good faith doesn't seem to be entering into these discussions at all. And people wonder, well, why is everything so broken? Maybe we need more rules. I'm like, no, maybe we just need some basic decency. And that would improve that. I mean, I do think that the dysfunction between the masculine and feminine on our social level right now, I do think that is a reflective of a weakness of the chakra, not necessarily of the earth chakra, but of our own in that regard. And yes, there's been different ideologies that have played into it, and different pressures that have also not helped anything. But ultimately, it is a spiritual weakness that we are so at odds.
Yeah, the big things that showed up in my searches were the intuition, creativity, self, sexuality, adaptability, and compassion. And when you think about, the placing of that chakra on the human body, right beneath the navel in that womb area. So you have the symbolism again. Orange is one of those colors that is very warm. It's very inviting. It's not a danger color like red. It doesn't come off as harsh or anything like that. It actually comes off as very inviting, because most people will think yellow associates with the sun. But when you close your eyes on a sunny day, what do you see but the eyelids and that warm orangish color? I've always kind of associated that with, maybe what a baby sees inside the womb. So you've got this idea kind of all coming together, and then adaptability. You're coming out of the water onto the land in a lot of cases, even in an evolutionary process. You're talking about coming from child, in the womb to being a person separate from your mother. There's a lot of metamorphoses that connotate back well with water and the element of water, and water being so prevalent with change and going back into adaptability.
That is so beautiful, right down to that supposition that maybe this is what babies are seeing in the womb. That's going to give me something to really meditate and think on later on. Uh, What did
Glad to
you
add more homework to the list.
Well, I mean, we aren't just adding homework to our list. I think we're adding homework to a lot of people's lists right now. And by the way, we've currently got 12 with us right now. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Did you happen to come across the Incan creation myth associated with Lake Titicaca?
I think vaguely I briefed over it, but it wasn't in the purview to kind of sit down and
Mhm.
harp upon, just for the simple fact that, we can, come up with a bunch of them, right?
True, but I was just intrigued by it because in the creation myth you have this god whose name I'm going to mispronounce, so my apologies to any native Spanish speakers. Uh, Contiqui Veracocha. It said that he emerged from the lake, and as he emerged from the lake, he brought humans with him. And
Wow.
I thought that's an interesting. It's not like he emerged from the lake and then he created them. He brought the humans with him. Then he commanded the sun and the moon and the stars to rise up. And then after that point, he made more humans from the stone. And it was the stone humans who he sent out forth into the world. So I don't know
Hmm.
what it means, but it seems significant. So I'm bringing it up because uh, oh, and another interesting thing is that the Incas not only believe that the lake actually was their origin as a people, but they also believe that's where their spirits return to after death, and that brings in that Wiccan concept of the tomb and the womb.
That's the one that I had read about. I did not catch the God carrying the humans from the lake, but that brings upon an interesting theory, correct? So if you are from the lake and you are carrying entities from the lake as well, are those also godlike beings that you have spawned, and then you created the separate stone people? Is that kind of like your distinction between uh, gods and normies, so to speak?
I mean, maybe, maybe it is a distinction between people who are more of that direct bloodline of the gods in a more physical, concrete sense, versus those who came down further on the line. Not as a because I want to make sure that we're careful and we're not saying inferior to, because I don't think that's the proper way to look at it. I mean, that's like saying a butterfly is inferior to a cat. No, they're different. They are perfectly formed for what they are supposed to be. And also, coming up out of the water and being made out of stone, this is both coming out of the feminine elements. So maybe it is just metaphors for different kinds of mothers, maybe different mothers or of sorts. I'm not sure, but it does. But then
We'll
again,
have to get into that one.
yeah, and water's more conductive, and water's associated with all of our psychic senses. So maybe it is, perhaps, for lack of a better term, the witch bloodline versus the normal human bloodline. Completely, they can intermarry and reproduce and all this and that, but one just has, a little extra something on the psychic senses that the other, doesn't necessarily possess as well. Again, we are not talking about superiority or inferiority. If anyone comes at me in the comments, I'm going to get a ruler. I will reach through the screen and I'll whack the knuckles.
No, no, it just gives you a little bit more extra to the story, something to
Mhm.
elaborate upon, and understand that there's a reason why, even if you don't quite get it, there's always a reason why distinctions are made,
Oh,
and
yeah.
why people like us are so worried about speaking properly and not just kind
Yeah.
of word vomit all over the place.
Yeah. Oh, and I got scolded by an Aries a couple weeks ago,
Oh
saying,
my.
if people can't take something however I feel like saying it, that's their problem." And I thought, well, if you're trying to make a point, wouldn't it be more productive to make it in a manner that they would be receptive to hearing? Oh no, they got to toughen up. I'm like, but what if you're wrong? Oh no. But yeah, that's just a sidebar. But yeah, I got yelled at recently for that. My point
Shame
was
on
not
you.
made. I was not successful in that. But I've been trying to persuade an Aries that they could be, incorrect. I mean, shh, I should know better.
You
So, are
should.
you? That brings us to our either our root chakra or our solar plexus chakra of Uluru. Now,
Yes, yes.
for Harmonia, what did she put in the place of Uluru and the solar plexus chakra? That way, people have that in mind for our conversation. What did she think?
The interesting thing is she chose a location that wasn't on any other list, Mount
Really?
Fuji. And I will tell you that this was also another interesting pick due to the fact that, Mount Fuji is a volcano, and it's a lot of
Mhm.
volcanic activity. And going back to the geoformation of Mount Fuji, it's shaped by generations of volcanic activity, and it is the result of geological processes of more plate tectonics. It is under the Pacific plate, and it's sinking under the bottom of the Philippine plate.
Really?
So, yeah, the mountain is just 100,000 years old as well. So they think. So I'm pretty sure that's
That's pretty
why
young.
it doesn't get the I guess glamour of say, a very old rock formation such as Uluru would, but
Hmm.
it did strike me as a very fitting type source just due to the element of fire that
Hmm.
is associated with the solar plexus,
Right.
and just knowing that that whole mountain is kind of like young and rebellious, I guess is the way to put it, right? Because we're not quite sure what it's going to do yet.
That's true. The fact that it's sinking, I was not aware of that. Now, I did see Mount Fuji associated with the chakra, but it was one of the Coons mentioned that was a little bit more spiritual. It wasn't tied to our
Mhm.
physical chakras. He saw it more so as the seat of immortality, as kind of this life, death, rebirth one.
We got
We
downgraded on his list.
Yeah, it did get downgraded on his list. But I mean, we can get into that later on. But I mean, that is interesting. I can absolutely see the rationale for associating it with the plexus, because it's also, think about the seat of the will. Well, Mount Fuji, it popped up out of
Yeah.
sheer will.
But Uluru is very interesting as well. And like I said, I wasn't very familiar with what it looked like. You hear about it, but then
Hmm.
you've got to actually physically view it. And you look at the monstrosity that it
Yeah.
is, and it's kind of like, wow, all that flat land, and then bam, there's this big rock in the middle of nowhere.
It's very conspicuous. It does feel like it's trying to make a point.
100%. And that is the solar plexus right between the
Hmm.
rib cage and the navel. Most people will be familiar with it if they are fighting or ever taught self-defense. You're always told that upward motion to the solar plexus knocks the wind out of people. Anybody out there, if you need a quick self-defense lesson, there it is for the day. But it's also associated with aggression, anger, ego.
Hmm.
And when you look at a formation like this, what an ego, right? Like off
Yeah.
top, you have the audacity to rise above everybody else around you. You have to massively tower over the rest of the earth. That's quite an ego for a rock, if you ask me.
Well, and it's not just towering, because if it was like a rolling hill or a mountain, even that it would feel different. But it's this up, and then it's a relatively flat surface on top, like someone dumped a giant's table, put a tablecloth over it, and said, "Yeah, this is rock now, and it's just going to be there." I'm like, really? You had to set up exactly there. The rest of us were just kind of calmly going along, minding our own, and then there you are taking up all this space. It is very egocentric. Now that I was struck by it, but I didn't see it in quite those terms until you brought it up, and now I can't unsee it. I might be
and,
stuck
and
in
and
this.
also very reminiscent of anybody that that has a big ego. Like if
Hmm.
you're a good looking person, or if you're
Hmm.
somebody that stands out in a crowd, you're gonna have this effect on people. And I wonder if that's not an effect of the people that kind of live there, because you know,
Mhm.
Australia in and of itself is this unruly country
Oh,
made of
yeah.
the people that nobody wanted anyways. So, you know, I'm like, okay, this kind of makes sense. I could see that.
Well, it's not just that, but it also think of all the animal species. Everything there is trying to kill you,
Time to
and
kill you.
it's trying to kill you as quickly as possible. My husband and I were discussing this the other day. The difference between Missouri and Australia, as far as animal and plant species that were dangerous. In Missouri, everything it will kill you, but slowly, one cut at a time. It's going to draw out the suffering. There's something a little bit sadistic about it, but in Australia, it's like, oh no, you're taking up space. I can't have it out of my sight.
You're
You're
smaller
gonna,
than me,
yeah,
and I'm
you're
gonna
going
eat
to
you.
be, or I don't like you and I'm a snake and I'm going to bite you. And 15 minutes, you will be a memory. You will already be going back to the soil, and I won't even have to look at you pretty soon. I mean, it's a lot more aggressive, which to me, I mean, that does seem pretty consistent with solar plexus energy of just like my way or the highway. And also, it reminds me of people who have really overbearing auras, and not big one, not people who just they not charismatic, but just people who are absolutely overbearing, and to where you're just like, must I spend another
Morning
moment?
people.
Oh yes, morning people. Oh,
Morning people. That's, I think, the best way to put it. When yellow comes into play, I think morning person. Um if anybody's watched Office Space, the voice of the woman that answers the phone. Thank you for calling. How can I help you?
God.
Please hold. Thank you for calling. Please
Oh
hold.
God. I used to be a receptionist, and I had to create that voice, and because it was a good phone voice, and you had to be perky and welcoming and friendly. It was so freaking exhausting, and I hated it. I hated hearing myself say that. Can you imagine the people who are like that naturally? Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that sounds like a symptom of an overactive solar plexus to me.
Yes. And that's the one that, I think a lot of people forget to balance out too.
Mhm.
Because the out results of having an imbalanced solar plexus is just kind of like a grandioso idea of yourself. Like you said, that
Mhm.
pomposity to not be able to take the hint that you're too much.
Yeah. I mean, it goes beyond even a cult leader, because a cult leader has to be charismatic to where people are drawn to them, whether they're being drawn out of fear, or because they think they've got something for whatever it is, they have to be drawn towards them. With the overactive solar plexus, it is a repellent.
Truth.
It's
Very
very
truth.
it's interesting when you think about these things on a purely functional basis, and that's kind of where my headspace has been at as I've been doing my analysis of how is the doohickey functioning, because
Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty good doorway to figure out what we can really learn from all of this. And I do think the world has a bit of an issue with the solar plexus right now, whether it's overactive or underactive, because either it's people who are doing so much that if I hear their voice again, I'm going to scream, or people who are so passive, they won't do anything. And I'm like, I cannot breathe air for you. You are
Right.
going to have to assume some responsibility for yourself. And we don't have very much in between.
Well,
Or
think
maybe,
about this. How many people are actually going to Australia? I mean, we're kind
Mhm,
of playing with this idea that, these are huge draws to
mhm,
the human population. They're going there for their own healing and balancing and whatever they want to get from the site. My question, that I wrote down was like, how many people are actually going to this particular site? How many people are aware of its existence?
yeah.
And just
Mm.
being in this particular area in general, what else is there to draw people to this region? Because when you look at what is happening in Australia, just for the people that are there, they're going through a lot of turmoil. They
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know their self or their identity. And it's a huge, like, lost in the sauce type of process, which, in my opinion, leads me to believe that they're having some ego issues. They're having some self-doubt, some aggression problems, with whether that be they're upset with their position in the world, or they're upset with their progress. Like, I don't know, because I'm not Australian, but from an outsider's perspective, I was struck to find out that this is, where this particular chakra is for the earth. And it again reiterates how these things do really give you a read on the health of the earth itself.
It makes me wonder if because if things were functioning properly and they had a reasonable degree of confidence, it seems like they would be more of a presence and a force of the world instead of the United States, just because of the nature of the solar plexus chakra. So maybe the seeds for that insecurity was just built in. I mean, you had the Aborigine people, they were minding their business for what, 40,000 years before Europeans showed up. So I mean, they seemed like they were okay. They had their way of doing things. So, that was all very good. Then someone else comes in and that disrupts them. But even worse, the people who were being brought in, I mean, they were criminals, that England was just trying to flat out get rid of. And other people who were so lost and had failed where they had to start all over and there. So I'm wondering if that insecurity and I'm not sure what steps to take. I'm not sure who I am. I'm not sure what I can achieve, has just been built in from the inception of the modern era. So I don't know. Maybe all of that was actually enough to unbalance that chakra in and of itself, to where it couldn't just kind of gradually bring people into balance in a more passive way. There's just too much of that all at once. I mean, it's as good a theory as anything else to explain the Australians. Let's be real.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, are you ready for the heart chakra?
Oh, we're ready. We
Because I
are
am.
ready. This is gonna be everybody's favorite, I think.
Oh, well, I'm biased because I love England. It's a huge part of my heritage. I love every blade of grass. I have absolutely apoplectic reactions to anyone who does anything to harm it. And for a lot of my ancestral gods, this was a seat of their very ancient power. And the size of the heart chakra, it's encompassing Glastonbury, Shaftesbury, the Glastonbury, particularly the Tor. That's the most probable site of Avalon, as it once was. And then, of course, this also encompasses Stonehenge, which no one on this earth who knows anything about anything is unaware of Stonehenge. And like, it has significance. Academics and spiritual people might argue about what that significance and function is, but we agree it's a something.
Yeah, it's something, it aligns itself with, multiple, sun positions, star positions, moon
Hmm.
positions.
Equinoxes,
um
solstices.
Yeah, it's been gathering people since its inception. And whether or not you succumb to its spiritual overwhelming beauty,
Mhm.
whether you really want to get into the mathematics of how this thing is set up, or if you are more of like an artsy fartsy type person who's just there to observe the structures and figure, well, how did they even get any of this material here? I think it has something for everybody. And the fact that Harmonious wanted to credit this chakra with Maui,
Mhm.
and of course, she had her reasons in the geoformation with the volcanic eruptions and the movement of water on the island. I liked the heart chakra here better, and I think
Yeah.
that it is quite literally a space that falls into everybody's heart for one reason or another. So it's just so fitting, and associated with the element of air. You're talking about like people just come and go
Oh
so
yeah.
quickly there. It's perfect as the heart chakra, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's sacred to the two predominant religions in that area, as well as people of other philosophies. For the Christians, they think that Joseph of Arimathea came here with the cup of Christ, and it was buried here, and everything else. There's the King Arthur legend that just tied in here. The idea of Avalon before it fell into the mists was in this general vicinity, very, very close. And as far as, the interdimensionals between our realm and the Fey realm, that could be literally true. A lot of the practitioners there locally certainly believe it. And, pagans come there. There's a huge Beltane celebration over here every single year.
Gorgeous too, by the way. You
Oh,
go and
yeah.
you watch the sunrise and how it comes
Hmm.
up through the stones and the
Hmm.
architecture. It's beautiful. I mean, anybody that has a heart will be able to appreciate it for what it is, beyond its assumptions. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can tie it to whatever you want. The fact is that this impressive structure has touched so many individuals over its existence, and nobody even knows who to give it credit to, right?
Yeah,
Like,
because, I mean,
so
these things are that freaking old. I mean,
right.
we can date the little chapel, what survives of it, on top of the tour, but the tour itself and how that came into being, because if you look at the surrounding, I mean, that's a pretty good pitch.
Yeah.
I don't think nature did that entirely on its own. I mean, it just the effort to achieve that, I mean, goodness knows. And one thing that I heard a lot of people, I heard more commentary about Glastonbury and the heart chakra than I'd found on anything else. And people kept talking about, I was healed here. I am healing. I am feeling better. I'm doing my shamanic training here. I came here for the weekend, but then I decided to stay.
Druids.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, just everything is just, I don't want to say that it's a trap, but it feels like it's bringing in people for some pretty intensive spiritual work that's bringing them back into balance. Now, whether or not there comes a point in their journey where, you know, essentially Avalon is saying, okay, now go forth into the world and take what you've learned and spread it elsewhere. That's different. But let's see. We got another. We've from Wolf says the nearby Avebury stones have more of a human vibe. Yeah, and
Oh,
I'm not surprised to hear that. There's differences in the intensity of the energy. I mean, that seems pretty normal to me, and I would imagine that depending on what time of year, that kind of affects how things feel. But I mean, just you look at these pictures, and I cannot take my eyes off them in a way that I don't have the same reaction to other chakras, and I don't know if it's just because a lot of I mean, Wicca is essentially the modern pagan version of the pagan traditions that once existed in England and then kind of expanded upon. I don't know if it's that because that's my religion, because of my ancestry or whatever else it is, or just because it's damn pretty. But there's something that is just magnetic that makes a person want to stay. And because it's the heart, that's just this in our own bodies, our heart chakras are that union between the more physical chakras and the more spiritual chakras. And this also feels like that midpoint for the entire world where things are coming together in this balance and harmony.
yeah, so it's associated with the color green, which, I mean, obviously, when you look
Yeah.
at it, like, it just screams green. And
Hmm.
green is a very unique color, especially for witches or pagan-based
Hmm.
worshipers, because we know that that translates directly to nature. Like, when you think of any type of religion that's nature based, the green will probably be predominant in your head as soon as you hear it. And it's associated with passion, trust, love, compassion. And I think compassion is actually what we're experiencing most from
Hmm.
sites like this, especially these particular ones in this particular region. Like you said, a lot of conflict on these grounds, a lot of battles being fought, not only on a religious affront,
Hmm.
but from a land standpoint, who's going to do what, where, how they're going to move forward. And even still to this day, to see everybody accommodate everybody else in this space, it doesn't get much more compassionate than that. And it really does embody that heart and connection between, yes, we're all here physically, but spiritually we're on different levels. So,
Mhm.
perfect embodiment.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't want to move on, but we had better because otherwise we'll never leave
We
here.
won't get to the end.
We will not. We will not at all. So this brings us to the one Earth chakra that isn't directly on either of the dragon lines. It's kind of in between them, and it's also right over the air vortex of the world. It's essentially occupying that same spot. And it is, the Great Pyramid at Giza, the Sphinx at Giza, but it also extends into, interestingly, Mount Sinai, where in Jewish tradition, that's where Moses got the Ten Commandments, and then the Mount of Olives, where Christ is said to have given the Sermon on the Mount. So it's just very interesting that we have the throat chakra, which is all about communication, and here we have, a very ancient pagan tradition as well as monotheistic traditions coming out of this part of the world. And one thing they have in common is that they freaking wrote things down. I'm looking at everybody else from the ancient pagan world who didn't write shit down. They wrote things down.
The Egyptians were really, really good at that. We might not always understand what they wrote, but they God damn it, they wrote it.
Yes, I mean that at least gives us something to work with, and thank goodness they do, because without that heritage, I mean, we would be having to be filling in a lot more gaps than we otherwise would have. And I was so fascinated. I watched a documentary a couple months ago in which they were discussing rather, a chamber underneath the Sphinx where it has all of these astrological notations, and
Mhm.
the most recent dating on the Sphinx takes it well older than any of the pharaonics. They essentially think that the pharaoh whose face is currently on the Sphinx, that was a part of a restoration, and kind of, let's make this pretty again. It's had damage. They actually think it goes back about 10,000 years, and they think
Mm.
that because of the water damage on the Sphinx,
Yeah.
which the last time that area of the world was wet at all was about 10,000 years ago because of weather patterns. But also that takes us back to the astrological age of Leo. So the current hypothesis is that this was originally headed by a gorgeous lion, which, as a Leo, this makes me happy. But it
Yeah.
also lends credence that people have come here since before the Egyptians. And when I was growing up, we were always taught, oh, the Egyptians, they're the most ancient of ancient civilizations. Well, not really.
Sumerians. Yeah,
Things
copy
are getting
there.
older. A lot of places have a lot more older, and we know that now. But it just shows, just this place has been pulling people in for forever, and they've all been wanting to leave their marks.
Yeah, I actually, I'm gonna do a little shameless plug. When I was doing research for Mr. Big's Magical Guide to Gambling, I found that the origins of gambling date all the way back to the Sumerians, and getting
Really?
into ancient Egyptian culture. The board game of Senate was actually an early Ouija board that the Egyptians were using to communicate with the dead, that ultimately trickled into a lot of the gameplay that we all already and still engage in the casinos. So, it is very interesting to me how close our entertainment world and our spiritual world are intertwined, and what they did for fun. So when you talk about like the throat chakra, the reason why these are all connected to three
Mhm.
individual points is because one's representative of the tongue, the neck, the mouth, and it's
Mhm.
all oriented with the throat and communication. So when you're talking about like expression and having your point get across, we talk a lot about the origins, right? And
Mhm.
and keeping these records and being able to go back and refer to these records. These people were on it. They are some of the oldest records that we as humans now are able to go back and refer to. And what a better point to illustrate but the desire of humans to communicate to the spiritual realm since the beginning of time. I mean, since
Yeah.
we first started this gig. We've wanted to reach across that veil. We've wanted to make those connections. So I found it to be quite fitting for these particular pyramids in themselves to be associated with the throat chakra. Um, Mount Sinai and Mount Olives aside, with
Mhm.
the monotheistics and their kind of origin stories. Personally, I looked at the Great Pyramids and thought, you know what, I disagree with Harmonious there, as they're the ones who put Gastonberg and the Stonehenge in for this
Really?
particular chakra.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
didn't agree with
disagree.
that.
That's not feeling the vibe there at all. I mean, everything
No,
about this, it's so much centered upon that idea of communication, but also not just communication in the here and now, but communication through the ages. One of the ancient civilization theories I've been really giving a lot of credence to lately is that these great monuments were essentially left as building blocks, in reference to more ancient philosophies, to where we can actually rebuild. We have the necessary
we
information.
have the technology.
Well, not just the technology, but we have the freaking clues. We have the language, and the Giza site, it has all of that alignment with the belt of Orion, the way this pyramids is structured. That brings in the idea of sacred geometry, which I'm
Which
just
we
starting.
talked about,
Yeah, I'm
at length.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot. All of it is there. All of the building blocks are there, as well as the mythology of the Egyptians themselves. This idea of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and the necessity of both the masculine and the feminine. And even though we don't necessarily think as strong of elemental associations with Egypt now, when this was saying set forth, I'm thinking that there was a time where there was a lot more balance between fire and air and water and earth. Whereas now, we look at it now, I'm thinking, okay, fire, air, earth for sure, but it's air, just because of of the records, but also because of the desert winds and the heat. That's more so what we're seeing now. But that's looking at it with the modern perspective. We go back to the time when at least the Sphinx was constructed, if not the pyramids themselves. We're looking at something that was a lot more elementally balanced, and it just feels like this. I'm not saying this was, the birthplace of magic, but I'm saying I think this was certainly a place where magic has a
Good
very long
bedrock.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bedrock. It has. I don't want to say codified. That's not the right word. But people have discovered principles, and they actually started creating schools of thought based on those consistent principles.
I kind of struggled with the element of air too, not only because it was redundant,
Hmm.
but because, like you said, it's kind of like, well, air, yeah, everywhere has air. But when you refer back to communication and the passing of wind, so when you talk, you're passing
Hmm.
air. And when you're moving one thought process to another, it kind of travels through the air. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily like you're writing something physically down all the time and passing it along. So I guess that kind of got me over the hump with it. But that's about the only connection to it that I could really feel solid in justifying.
Yeah. Well, and I've been debating about whether or not to bring this up just because I don't want to get into the politics of that situation, but just the general upheaval of that area of the world. That is suggesting to me that perhaps there is an imbalance in that chakra. And I think a lot of it does have to do with with various uh, competing ideologies. And I think this also
Lack
ties
of communication. I
lack of
call it lack
communication.
of communication.
Well,
Yeah.
and sometimes over communication, because in the case of the monotheists, love you, but sometimes you don't know when we understood what you said the first time, and it's not necessary to repeat it. I think that's the most polite way I can put it. But also, I think it brings in an issue of. That is related to an imbalance of the root chakra as well. Because we've been talking about the foundation of our faith and paganism in general, and how there's a lot of discussion and debate around various concepts, but we always go back to the physical earth, We always go back to things that are tangible, that are real, that are testable, and we draw things back to that. Whereas with the Abrahamic monotheistic traditions, it's going back to a particular story of a particular man and him saying that his God is who people later said that that God was, and archaeology doesn't agree. And so I think because of that conflict, of the very foundation, I think that is feeding into it. And also, I think it feeds into religious conflicts within the Abrahamic tribe about who's right, because as long as there's question, as long as there's reasonable argumentation to the contrary, I don't think that's really a solvable problem. And that's as far as what I will ever comment on that whole mess in that region. That's as far as I will go. Not my circus,
No,
not my monkeys.
that's in a nutshell, absolutely, I agree with the assessment of the situation, and it isn't for us, as pagans to stick our nose in that particular end of the business, because at the end of the day, these individuals have to find a way to split the land amicably amongst themselves, and it's hard to do with the stories that both of the parties are clinging to in the state that they are in. But as far as we are concerned, I hope that doesn't keep us away from the plethora of information that is pertinent to all of humanity in this particular region and location, because not only are the pyramids themselves something to see and to behold, but the architecture speaks volumes of what type of influence humans can have on the earth. And this is a amazing spectacle, in my opinion, of the ability of humans to make something that would otherwise be bland, drab, and unnoticed into something that is actually worth traveling millions of miles to be in the awe and inspiration of. So as long as we protect these ancient writings and the impact that it has on humanity, that's what I'm concerned with.
Oh yeah, I mean that is the paramount thing. It's an achievement as far as archaeology and everything else, and it's just what it represents. That is so paramount, no matter what background is. And I want to say hello to Apple Eater with Rome, who is new to the party. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you here. And Apple Eater also went on to say, if you believe humans made the pyramids, that's not an aspect of the discussion I'll be getting into today. We're going to stay more focused on the chakras themselves and their functionality and essentially, I suppose where we are is, where we're seeing our relationship with them at this point in time. And, who knows? There could be future discussions in which we go more in depth on related topics. So now we have the business of the third eye, which again, according to Kuhn, this moves around with each astrological age, and currently it's centered over Glastonbury, centered over Stonehenge. It's essentially occupying the same space as the heart chakra, and we're getting kind of a double chakra whammy energy there. However, I noticed Harmonia also said that she put it, this chakra, and she put it as a fixed point, and I'm going to mispronounce this terribly.
Me too.
Ka-e-Malaksia in Iran, Great Big Mountain. That's where she put it. I didn't feel anything there, but there could be other explanations for that, simply because I hadn't heard it mentioned. I didn't get much of an I don't know. I wasn't really resonating with her explanation. And then again, let's be real. My sense of connection to Glastonbury and England in general, that is pretty overwhelming. So of course it's going to make sense to me that the third eye is also there, and that's intensifying the energy of the area. But that could be Brigantia bias. What did you think of the possible placement in Iran of whatever that name is that I butchered?
So when you think of the third eye and what it represents, your intellect, your spirit, wisdom, And the idea that this could have no fixed location, right?
Mhm.
Um, I like that theory because if you're thinking about what the third eye represents, then based upon where the balance of that chakra is, would actually be the location of it, right? Like,
Mhm.
obviously the earth doesn't have what we would say the sense of spirit the way we would think it's a sense of spirit. Like
Mhm.
we as far as we know, it doesn't have any sentience to look into the future or reflect upon its past. It merely exists in perpetuity. So for this particular chakra to have a fixed point, I agree. I don't think that it really makes any type of sense, because it would be something that is constantly um showing you a glimpse into a certain aspect of what's imbalanced. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It
So
does. And I remember reading that Kumki was tying it to magnetic poles and tilt of the earth and things like that. So as that shifts, that was also his justification for how this coincided with astrological ages. So I mean
right.
that does kind of hold water for me. Before we go further, Apple Eater with Rome says, "So you are saying the planet has chakras?" Yes, that's what the whole stream is about. This theory was, I guess, presented. What was it, 1970s or so, or was it a bit earlier?
Yeah, I want to say it was probably around about there, late 69, 70. I want to say
Yeah.
around that period. This
Yeah.
this theory started becoming like pretty popular.
Yeah. And it has to do with various spiritual energy points centered all over the earth. And these are correlated with the chakras in the human body. It goes back to that magical principle as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. So what we find within ourselves, we're also going to be finding manifested on our planet. That's the principle that we're playing with here. And we're kind of going through the theory. And this is new and, well, new. Okay. This theory could very well, I don't know how old you are, but it could be older than you. It's older than Georgia and I. So this is something that is in development. Um, but yeah, that's where we are with it.
Oh,
And as a reminder for those who are interested, I did leave some reference links in the description box below for if you're wanting to look into this further. And we have a message from Elizabeth Russell, says, "Great topic. Thank you for doing this presentation. Thank you for being with us. It's a long one. We still got tons to go through, but
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, we got a couple more to go.
Yeah, I got a couple more to go because, I want to talk briefly about the spiritual chakras that Kuhn brought forward, as well as the elemental wheels, and then that will about do for the present. But we're having a great time. This is a fun afternoon for a Wednesday.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I really like the idea of the third eye really being centered over the heart chakra is because I feel like a lot of the birthplace of paganism, when it was brought back into the world, it was coming from all of that heart chakra goddess energy that is emanating out of England. It was like mother was waking up, or not, if not waking up, we were finally willing to hear her voice. And I think that's one of the many reasons why, especially in witchcraft circles, why for so long there was a great deal of emphasis upon goddess energy for a very long time, because things were trying to be brought back into balance. Now we're like, okay, we are present, we are aware she is here. Now we have to figure out the equilibrium between the masculine and the feminine. We're struggling with that a lot, but with that, there's just, it feels like this is where we are needing to be, like we're brought back into right relationship. And the fact that this is being done through the heart shows that this is going to be um, an emotional process, not just an intellectual process. And before you respond, Apple Eater with Rome is asking, what about Atlantis? Atlantis is not featuring in today's conversation. And you also asked if Atlantis was the birthplace of the woo woo. The honest answer is we don't know. We don't know
Nobody
how
knows.
how far back pagan traditions actually go back on Earth. I suspect that as soon as humans were capable of having any civilization, as soon as we were able to look past our own nose and our physical beings and realize that we are more than meat and matter, that was essentially the beginning of spirituality and really the beginning of paganism itself. And it's coming back into the world and as a very strong force. So hope that answers that question, but I've rambled. So it's George's turn.
Yeah, I was going to say not to push us too far off a topic, but just some of the ideas that came into mind when I was thinking about this third eye chakra and how we could go about pinpointing where the next location might be, or where or where eventually we would settle on the idea of a third chakra being. You know, I got to thinking about the planetary alignments and star placement, and thinking that maybe even looking to the heavens to find where a particular astrological formation of stars falls into play, or where this particular assembly of planets or alignments can be viewed, if that would be a way to maybe anticipate where the third eye spirit would be more intense, or if it is something that kind of has to overlap another chakra, because it kind of does the wisdom part for you, right? Like you take all the things that you learned, and it's kind of like your hindsight, if you will, your third eye, that insight to your mind, and kind of why you do the things that you do. So I don't know if any of those ideas strike anybody as being close to home, or something that might be elaborated on.
Yeah, I'm not sure because they were a bit fuzzy on, how we might calculate where it might be next. Now, I did hear Brazil was offered as where it is likely to be during the age of Capricorn, which astrological ages can last as long as what is it, 2,500 years?
Yeah,
So
something like that.
we will not
It's
be in our
fun.
current incarnations when that comes about. But the suggestion was that it will go over Brazil. If that turns out to be correct, then that suggests that it doesn't have to be over another major chakra. And that has me questioning what's in Brazil.
Yeah.
Brazil's apparently going to be a
We'll
place
have to
at some
brush up on
point.
our geography.
Well, I mean, are we talking about rainforest areas? Are there some kind of ruins that are going to be discovered? Is there going to be another awakening of a different pagan civilization? Maybe one that we don't know anything about at present. I don't know, but that's where my head went, and it just thought, finally, uh, my current form will be dead, but maybe I'll be reincarnated at the time. But finally, the new world is going to be getting a little extra love. So
Yeah.
and then will it have a closer relationship with the sacral chakra and Lake Titicaca? Will their auras intersect or anything? I don't know. I'm not going to live long enough to find out, but it is interesting to think about.
Yeah, and it goes back to, keeping good records, and
Yeah.
why we're so meticulous with writing things down.
Yeah, well, not only that, because I think a lot of us are truly traumatized by, the limitations of our research capabilities. And sometimes the answer just isn't there.
Yes. This is true. It takes a lot of thinking outside the box, right?
Let's see. Apple Eater with Rome brings up Brazil has one of the highest homicide rates in the world. Good luck with that third eye. Well, we don't know what the situation in Brazil is going to be 2,500 years from now. I mean, we just started in the age of Aquarius, so it's going to be a minute, and a lot can happen in between then and now. And, if it is still prone to violence in that particular time period, the third eye coming out, there might be some progress made with people examining the causes for conflict, why violence is taking place, and be dealing with it in a more constructive manner in some way, or structuring things to where if you can keep conflicts to where they're not dragging in all and sundry, that would at least be a step forward. I don't think we eliminate. I don't think we eliminate conflict ever. Conflict is just part of existence.
Yeah, and it's necessary. Without conflict, guys, life would be really boring. Let's be real here.
Yeah. I mean, after all, not all conflict has to necessarily be a bad thing. I mean, haven't you ever been attracted to someone who you were just constantly bickering with? I'm not talking about abusive speech or nasty argumentation, but just just kind of picking at each other. And and if you've had that experience, do you recall the ultimate outcome and reward of that interplay of energies? I'm just saying is that sometimes the nature of conflict isn't necessarily bad. It really is very context dependent. And also, you have to think about what comes out of conflict. And I think so much people are concentrated on what it costs. And of course, we shouldn't enter into especially physical conflict lightly.
Right.
That should never be option number one. But if we can not only look at the pain that conflict brings, but if we look at what can be produced out of it, anything that we can bring constructive out of it, because sometimes we learn some very hard lessons through conflict that we wouldn't have learned any other way, and those lessons tend to stick. So not fun in the moment, but get something out of it. Alrighty, so are you ready for the crown, ma'am?
And that's the last one on my list.
Oh, good. Then I get to torment you with my list. So I was told on all of my lists that it was Mount Kailash in Tibet. Does that square up with your own research?
Yeah, all except for Harmonious, who decided that Mount Shasta, which we already discussed,
Mhm.
was better for the crown. So, I tend to agree with everybody else and put this right in the Himalayas.
Yeah, especially with the Buddhist traditions coming out of the Himalayas, with that is a very, I would say, almost flesh denying aspect of spirituality that is so focused on the non corporeal that it goes to that other end. That does seem a little bit more consistent. And I don't know if it was the lighting of this photographer or if there's some kind of mineral that's giving it that pretty gold color, but it feels like the original theory was correct.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's interesting to me because they say that the crown's associated with the color white,
Mhm.
enlightenment, energetic thoughts, and alternative planes and spirituality. So when you think about like this particular mountain range in general, just the height,
Oh, yeah.
the connotations, like you said, Tibetan monks, the first thing you
Mhm.
think of is snow-capped hills. And more so, I think, than like even Mount Fuji or Mount
Oh, yeah.
Shasta, because you think California, you think greenery, you think Mount Fuji, you think brown, more like, Japanese type culture, maybe the cherry blossoms or whatever. But when you think Tibet, when you think the Himalayas, you think like abominable snow monster, right?
Yes,
So you've got
Yetis.
yes. You've got these very big like white snow caps and high mountain range and these people who are on the path of enlightenment who put it in and first and foremost in their minds that like they almost want to be above humanity, and I don't mean
Mhm.
that in an egotistical sense. I mean in a sense that they want to experience life in a much fuller dimension than what a
Mhm.
typical average human can experience it. They want to feel the elements and be a part of the earth. And I personally thought that this was perfect for the crown. It just screams top of the spiritualistic mind. And then it said that the location of the full moon in Scorpio appears on top of the
Mhm.
Himalayas.
I saw
So
that too.
it's like, okay, I mean, how else do you get like this almost divine sign that this is an important mountain, guys? Take a look. I'm gonna show you right here.
Say what you will of Scorpio. The one thing it can't be accused of is being frivolous.
No.
If anything coming out of Scorpio is speaking, it matters. And side note, Olympic Gray Lurker says, as a customer service rep, my solar plexus and throat chakras are always on the verge of burnout. Much sympathy to you. Maybe drawing down some energy from the crown chakra to help you connect more so with your spirituality will help keep some of the. I cannot begin to imagine the kind of vibes that come into your system. So maybe that
Stay
will
true to
help.
yourself. I was a sales rep for some time, and it's really, really hard when you're constantly told like how to sales pitch. But what I found is like if you're doing it your own way and not necessarily the way that you're taught, and I know this is really bad advice, don't get fired from your job, but try to pitch on a way that you're comfortable with. And if you know, you know. So good luck to you. I really hope that that it doesn't get too bad.
Yeah, very, very best of luck.
They'll burn
Um,
out quick in that job for
yeah.
sure.
Okay, so hard segue back to the crown chakra. When I was looking at this picture, one thing that really struck me was just the simplicity. And I feel like once you get into that really higher chakra, to where it's you, and the next step is essentially face to face with the gods, for lack of a better term. I do feel like that a lot of things do slip away, and you are left with that simplicity, and it's just the bare bones of what matters, of what is truly real and exists and has meaning and significance. And there is something about that kind of environment of survival is very forefront. It's very simple and straightforward what you need to do and when you need to do it in order to not die at those kind of elevations and with that kind of wintry environment. It's very clear cut. But if you operate within that clear cut, if you are not constantly fighting it, if you are operating along with the order of nature, I think that does really lay a strong pathway towards making those higher divine connections. Is that kind of resonating with you as well? Because that was one of my first thoughts.
Absolutely. I mean, not only again does the symbolism exist there, the people that live there, that originated there, the types of stories that happen there, even scenes that you see in movies or descriptions that you read about in books. This is all very reminiscent of looking at something on a higher level, seeing again deeper into the story than what is kind of there at the surface, and understanding maybe even not necessarily your own juxtaposition into the story, but understanding on a higher level what everybody else's position is. And we tend to be very selfish things as humans are in general. We are predetermined to be extremely conscious of our own comfort, safety, security, well-being, but to go and be aware of somebody else's, or
Yeah.
to understand a struggle, or to empathize with other individuals puts you on a level that again is almost godlike, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what we look at a lot of deities as being, the mother or the father figure, and the comfort figures. But if we ourselves can make that enlightenment or that step up, doesn't that put us kind of on that same level?
I would think so, or at the very least, taking steps in that direction. And ultimately, that is the goal, and with paganism, it's not so much that, we're trying to reject the flesh, or we're trying to get off the wheel or anything like that, that some other traditions are trying. It's more so of what is the fullest expression of where I'm supposed to be in this particular incarnation. What am I supposed to do? Being fully in harmony with that. And I do think that's one of the ways that we do come into that closer harmony, because there is a part of us, that part of us that connects us with the gods, that is, I suppose divine spark is the more modest way to put that. I didn't want to say godlike because that felt presumptuous in the extreme, but that
We
divine
try to
spark.
say tentatively, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that that thing that within us that resembles them, the thing that makes us different than, the cat, the dog, the cow outside, all of those things, the things that generally make us unique. And there's something beautiful and the uniqueness of being human. We're in a very special position, and I think we're just starting to come to grips with that, with what that means, and honestly, what a grand gift that it is. In some ways, I think that we do have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and to become more aware of it through the ages and time, sure, we've
Mm.
always kind of been tied to the world that we live in, but I don't think we've done such a great job of expressing it up until this past millennium or so.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting again to think of how young we are as a species, if you buy into any type of evolutionary processes whatsoever, just on a broad, vague scale here, we are a very young species, and I think that there's a lot that we will encounter and we will learn and we will grow into, but what we can deal with now, what we have on our plates as a species now is more than enough to stimulate ourselves and interact with our surroundings in a level that is beneficial to both the environment and ourselves.
Yeah. We've got a ways to go, but it'll be a fun adventure. Now, I want to go into the chakras that you did not prepare for. So this is going to be real, raw, first-hand reactions, everybody. The
Indeed.
first, he brought up three additional chakras, and then he brought up four elemental wheels that essentially act like, the spinners that keep the energy flowing. So that's what we're going to finish up on. But the first of the more spiritual chakras that Kuhn brought up was the purification chakra that he put in Bali, in Indonesia. And that's whole purpose is the cleansing of energies. It's tied with the element of water. It's actually it's a place that the more I looked into it, the more I saw references to various types of temples, and all of it was about coming into this purified, cleansed state. So, what are you thinking of that? Are you seeing this as kind of like the laundromat of the world, taking all of the nasty energy we have brought up and bringing it into some kind of a better condition?
It's interesting to me that again, when you talk about the energy flow and the connections of these off chakra points or some of the energy in the ley lines and hotbed areas. So we saw it on the map of America where, the concentration amount of the population in an area seems to have a lot to do with that being a hotbed for energy or vortexes or any type of geo forces in the region. Now when you come to a lesser populated area like this, the thing that I would be most interested in finding out is exactly what's connected to that area point. So if you're seeing a lot of things that are say in the sacral chakra lines that connect to the let's just say to Lake Titicaca,
Hmm.
or if you're seeing something that draws a line between the solar plexus and whatnot, maybe you can kind of cross reference those points to use these particular areas to cleanse in a more thorough way. Maybe it's not just like an actual like general wash and wear type of activity. Maybe these are hotbed locations for a specific type of cleansing.
Yeah, just a second. I'm responding to something in the chat. Carry
Oh,
on.
yes, yes. So, that's what I would really see when it comes to like you said, these lower viewpoints of the chakra points, or what did they call them, something special on the other, but I didn't write it down. They're either access points, power points, or
Gateways.
energy gateways. That's what it
Hmm.
is, the gateways. So I think that that would have a lot to do with it. If it's connected in a certain fashion, then it's probably more predominantly gonna work if you work with the energy that's already there. Like you don't go to the ocean and expect to light a fire. You know
No.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're gonna go ahead and look at those like minor points, then you better be ready to see what kind of cross sections through there. Make sure that you're hitting the right area for the right reasons.
Oh, absolutely. And it also brought to mind that old saying in architecture about form follows function. And I think that's really another thing to keep in mind, as well as not confusing the actual energy of the land with poor behaviors
Yeah.
that might be an area might be known for. Apple Eater with Realm has been bringing up some things. And, look, no one is denying that people engage in poor behaviors in a lot of these places, but to conflate that with the energy of the land, I don't think that's a correct thing to do. If anything, that's showing about how that they are out of balance, they are not in health, they are not responding to that energy current from the earth, and the solution is for them to be brought into alignment with that, and that's going to require people going on their own spiritual journey and making application of what they learn. Um, it's not something that can just be imposed or done legislatively. It's just not how energy or
Well,
spirituality works.
not
It is a
not even
voluntary journey.
yeah, not even that, but whether or not you feel this energy and choose to react to it is going to be a lot of this issue. So if you're seeing turmoil and you're
Oh, yeah.
equating that with present energy, you're kind of got the wrong connotations there. They're two separate
Yeah.
things, and both things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. So we hope that helps everyone as they're kind of forming their own framework for this discussion. So the next
Mhm.
chakra that he brought up was the balance chakra, and he placed that in El Tul and Palenque, Oaxaca. That's probably mispronounced, but it's in southern Mexico, and
Is it
it was once,
Mexico?
yeah, it was once in a Mayan site. And in legend, it was said that people actually attained immortality there. And so, an interesting thing is that a lot of these sites of the Maya, at one point, um, the Aztecs eventually took over, and the Aztecs were known for absolutely horrific atrocities. So I'm wondering if some of the things that we see out of the Aztecs was actually a bastardization of what the Maya were initially doing, a twisting of the meaning of that. But this idea of bringing back into balance, and also having legends of immortality. I'm wondering if that's about bringing back into allowance the ebb and flow between life and death and honoring both.
Well, didn't Ponce de Leon go searching for the Fountain of Youth around this area of Mexico? If not, it was relatively in the same type of vicinity. So to have this particular area brought not only to the table, but here with this type of connotation between the balance of
Hmm.
between the life and death and seeking this eternal life or everlasting existence, for a lack of a better word, I think is very fitting.
Hmm.
Again, this idea, and I want to kind of bring this up as well, because if you believe that the earth is constantly shifting and moving, you kind
Hmm.
of have to go back to the idea of maybe Pangea, where everything
Yeah.
was kind of closer together.
Right.
And these beds, if you again think that they hold the energy that they hold, and they've always held that energy, then they would be closer, and they're all kind of moving and spreading out and moving apart from each other. So it makes sense that they're all going to end up in different areas of the world over time,
Hmm.
and that you're going to need a kind of connection point back to the start. And if I'm not correct, and I'm not really great at geography, but if you put everything back together in Pangea, this area of Mexico ends up being very close to the cradle of civilization.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes a lot of freaking sense that, again, you've got the beginning and the end point
Hmm.
now in two separate areas of the world, but they're both the same point.
Yeah, everything joins up back together in the end energetically because again we have that infinity flow between the two major ley lines and everything else. So no matter how the continents rearrange themselves, there are things that can't be broken. And with balance, I mean, even though it's not close together with the other points in the world, it is kind of at a quasi midpoint between the root chakra and the sacral chakra. That masculine and feminine. So I'm wondering if that is also representing the balance points between the projective and receptive energy. What
Oh,
do you think of that?
totally. Yeah. And like you said, if you're talking about birth and rebirth, there's that in between process, right? Like
Oh
you're
yeah.
alive for a while and then you die, and then what? You've got to be recycled in some point somehow.
Hmm.
So where's that space? Where's that movement in between? Is that now personified in the distance between one area and another?
I mean, that's absolutely a possibility. At the very least, I mean, it's a hell of a good metaphor. I mean, and as we and because like I said earlier in this stream, this is, the next stage research of modern paganism. We are
Right.
figuring out how this shit works. And that involves a lot of explanation, and it requires a lot of exploration and just kind of putting out ideas, putting them to the test and seeing how they fall. And the things that remain consistent are the stuff that ultimately future generations of pagans will inherit. So, I don't know how many times I've nagged people on this channel. Our spirituality is rooted in the past, but it didn't end there. So
No.
if so, so we need to join each other in the present and start building that future. And if anyone would like me to stop making that a particular sermon, well, you know how to make it stop. Cooperate. This is the other point that he brought up before we get onto the elemental wheels. And this was the chakra that he called immortality, representing that which is eternal, the world, the cycle of life, death, rebirth, and it is Mount Fuji. We touched on that quite a bit earlier. But, interesting thing is that in legend, for the Shinto people, it was considered to be sacred to the goddess Senge Sama, who is the embodiment of the spirit of nature. And the mountain in of itself was sacred to the Ainu, who are the aboriginal inhabitants of Japan. And the name itself of Fuji means immortal. And there are myths about how people here have attained physical immortality. A Japanese woman in particular, one story, she eternalized her body, whatever that means, from, from the summit. And what's very sad about this is that on the northwestern slope of Mount Fuji, now remember everyone, from your early witch lessons about how the west is the gateway to the dead and the north represents the tomb and the womb. It is on the northwest slope where you find the infamous suicide forest in Japan. So that's speaking to me about people either themselves being out of alignment for what this mountain is supposed to be, or something being a little hinky with that energy right there. But I thought that was very, very interesting. The place where so many people go to end it all as a place where they're actually supposed to be reminded of their immortality, at least of of their spirit.
Yeah, the suicide forest has long been a contention for individuals on the outside who don't quite understand exactly what that particular region means to those individuals who live there. Now, just as a off-topic fact about Japan, they're a densely populated area. For you to get the type of privacy that I would assume one would want when they're confronted with this decision that they have come to, it's probably not real easy to find those things. And from what I understand, the people that go there to end it are very concerned with somebody else having to find them.
Yeah.
So they don't want anybody in their immediate families to be the ones to come across them. And the reason they leave the string to find the bodies is to encourage somebody outside the family to find the body. And when you're confronted with that decision and you make the decision to go away, and you're perpetuated with the thought of somebody else then still being burdened with cleaning up the remainder of your act. I think that that already shows what state of mind that you're in. You're not gone yet, and you're not fully here yet
Yeah.
anymore. You know, so that
Mhm.
right there shows
Yeah.
me that those then going back to impressing upon people that you come with your own energy, dude. You have your own
Yeah.
thoughts, sentient mind, your own chemical makeup that interacts with everything else around you, letting you know that this isn't just made up energy that we're dealing with here. Everything has a
Mhm.
source. And you know, when you come to this particular area, and if you don't understand that connection of simultaneously being the end and the beginning, if you
Mhm.
can't wrap your head around those things, but you're impressed with these feelings, you're impressed with these ideas that just won't go away, I think that that is you know, very sad. And it's hard for people to pull out of that on their own.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, this is how you come to a situation like that. It's just a sad set of circumstances.
I think you highlighted far more eloquently than I ever could about why it's so important for us to educate ourselves about how energy functions. And we know this not only from inherited lore, but by testing that lore out and seeing in the real world in our own lives and those we know how all of this plays out. Because the more we understand, the better insulated we can be from perhaps being overwhelmed with energies that because of our state of mind, we might be drawn down a path that really isn't meant for us or that isn't healthy for us. But if we understand what's going on, that's that moment where you can, okay, I can take hold of myself. And sometimes it's those moments where it's, shields up. And especially if you have empathic capabilities or other psychic talents, there are times when you do need to block things out. I mean, it's an extraordinary gift to be able to have um, more sensory capability than perhaps the average human, but it comes with its own risks, and it comes with its own burden of self-care. And I think in this case of Mount Fuji, with that, that's a very stark example of just how wrong things can go if people are not engaged in that self-care and they don't understand the nature of that energy. So are you ready for something slightly more uplifting?
Let's do it.
So this
Oh,
brings us to the energy
fire.
wheels. We are coming to the fire wheel. We're both fire signs. I'm a Leo. George is a Sagittarius, for those who don't know. So fire is where we are very comfortable. This is energy that is instinctive for us, and we are much happier when we can just go in that mode. But the interesting thing about the wheels is that Kuhn said they were kind of like pulleys. They're pulling the energies along. They're making everything flow a bit faster through the ley lines, and they can go clockwise, counterclockwise, all that stuff. So let's just talk a little bit about our elemental ones. This one is the fire vortex, representing the will. Those of you who are familiar with the Witch's Pyramid, this will be very familiar to you in concept. But it's in the get ready for another extraordinarily awesome pronunciation.
That's right.
Haleakala Crater, Maui, Hawaii. He says that this particular vortex has a great deal to do with the concept of liberty, which makes sense because the will, pursuing your highest purpose, doing so with the sense of practicing justice, of in the sense of you are doing that which is right. It's very interesting that it's centered on essentially what is the crater of a dormant volcano, which I don't believe in such a thing as dormant volcanoes in general, and definitely not in Hawaii.
No.
Um, but interestingly, it said that the depression, the lowest point, is the quietest place on Earth. They've measured it, and that if you ascend all the way to the top of the summit, you actually go through 6 of the 14 climate zones. Which,
Wow.
yeah, I can't even wrap my brain around that. But so, what do you think of essentially our spirit's home?
Yeah, I feel at home. Not only does this fire wheel in Maui find itself surrounded by water and influenced by, the air of the sea, the wind and the elements, and it's created its own earth in essence.
Mhm.
Volcanic activities tend to be, magmic um formations that is just ash and carbon and rock and molten lava, like the core of the earth. Like, we think of fire like as like this kind of like flickering element that just like is like intense and yada yada yada. But when you think of the center of the not the universe, of the earth, like the molten rock and lava and fire in the core of the earth, what gives us life, because we need warmth to survive. Fire is cleansing. It can kill bacteria and other harmful diseases and things that otherwise wouldn't be molecularly changed with any other type of like cleaning supplies, or trying to eliminate it or eradicate it in any way, shape, or form. So it sounds like it's a very destructive type of element, but ultimately, once everything's kind of cooled off, it becomes the most fertile ground that you could, plant on and work within the soil. And again, just everything seems to come from the brightness, the fire, and the ability to both destroy and create all in the same element.
Fire is such a do-it-yourself element, isn't it? I mean,
Mm.
I like what you said before about it will make its own earth, and I thought I have watched both you and I essentially make our own earth, metaphorically. If something doesn't exist, we think something ought to be, so we made it ourselves.
That's
Whether
right.
there are conversations that we thought that should be taking place, we didn't see them, we couldn't find them, so we created them. I mean, and that's very much the nature of what it does. It is such a beautiful thing with that, and so dynamic. I understand why Harmonia did associate this with the heart chakra, but I think this fits so much better as just kind of that source of the fire element of the world. Now,
Truth.
next up, we have the Earth Wheel, and this is located at Table Mountain in Cape Town, South Africa. It is said to govern the usage of light as a force to develop life, so bringing in that light for that. And it was apparently sacred to Kahoi and San the Kahoy and San peoples, who believe that their supreme god, who is either called Tusi or Goab, that this is essentially where that deity roamed. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I do look at this and I see Earth, I see stability.
I
There's
see
not a
the
lot of
Lion King.
yeah, yeah, a little bit, yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of political or social stability in South Africa, that's for sure. But as far as the actual landscape, I mean, you see something that can certainly be built upon.
Now, Cape Town, Cape Town. Why do I want to associate Cape Town with Bob Marley? Was that the town that he referred to in No Woman No Cry? Or I don't know. Anyways, it does give me a lot of Lion King vibes and Circle of Life vibes. And if we're gonna go and say Earth, I would say that this is very, very fitting. Aside from the Lion King connotation, uh just the idea of um I think animals
Yeah.
in the wheel of the chain of life, the circle of life.
Mhm.
The antelope eats the grass, the lion eats the antelope, and then man hunts the lion. And it really does personify again just a very crisp, clear picture
Mhm.
of the needing of everybody to one
Mhm.
another. We all need each other for survival.
Oh yeah, and it has to keep going in that cycle. I mean, this is another, the earth of course is very feminine, so it's another manifestation of that tomb in the womb. It brings forth life, but it also it encompasses the remains of the death, and it has to do that. I mean, and that
I'm
really
seeing a
speaks.
theme here with
Yeah,
these minor
oh
points.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they're very much the embodiment of these things, which is why I really think he did get them right. I really, really do.
I
So
do, and
next.
we said that at the beginning that Coon was probably going to be our favorite, but going back to what Apple was kind of trying to bring to the table with the idea that you can kind of come to your own conclusions based on what is actual fact and reality. It's not hard to come to these decisions.
Oh yeah. And test everything. Test every idea. I mean, if you take anything away from this, take away that, please. So the air
Please.
wheel is very familiar to us. We've gone into a great length about the Great Pyramid and Sphinx, so we won't spend too much time on this. But this is essentially the air vortex of the world, which again absolutely makes sense
I agree.
because everything coming out of this region is blah 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 blah. I mean, you could not possibly forget it even if you tried.
In more ways than one.
Yeah, I'm sorry to put it quite so bluntly, but sometimes we have to say things straight. And like I said, we've gone into this so much with the throat chakra. I want to kind of move on to our last point, which is the water wheel or the water vortex. Um, which I don't know if this is the proper image of this particular lake, but it's what came up on
It's so
Pinterest. So,
pretty.
yeah, it's so pretty. It's in New Zealand. I figure it's freaking close enough. Lake, oh dear gods, Rotopaunamu, North
That's
Island, New
good.
Zealand. Yeah,
That's good.
I said it with confidence. So this is the point which he said governs love, which of course makes sense. Water, emotions, all it's all tied up in everything. That's one of the things where I think witchcraft and Wicca will always stand up to scrutiny because it has these correlations that always come back together in a logical fashion. So now the interesting thing about this is that it is an antipode, or it is on the exact opposite end of the earth from the site at Glastonbury. Yeah.
Wow. See, I'm telling you, we got to get better at geography. As witches in general, I think we should be, geography experts with how, juxtaposed this place is.
Well, remember what I said in our pre-game chats about how I want to get a special globe, and I want the chakra points in there color coded. I want lines, physical lines coming up 3D, between the chakra points, the ley lines, and I want to know where my, cross points are. I'm just so serious about that.
I
Now,
agree. I agree. I'm a visual person. I think that would be great for a lot of people that go a long way.
oh yeah. So I mean, this is opposite of Glastonbury, which is the heart chakra, and this is the water vortex. So that all makes a lot of sense. And there's also some legends about emerald stones, and emerald stones that also takes us into the philosopher's stone. But these are being the way that was described as that Glastonbury and this lake in New Zealand. I'm not saying that name again.
No.
That they are two halves of one whole. That the first emerald stone is in Glastonbury, and the second is in is in uh, is in New Zealand, and it comes together as the heart. And I thought that's a very interesting. It's one of those things. It doesn't matter to me if it's literally true. The symbolism of it is just so
So
gorgeous.
pretty.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of those similar feelings to me. In Glastonbury, I have a little bit more of that sense of the air kind of brushing away the impurities and getting rid of all of the yucky. And here I feel like the water is really finishing that job and it's all coming back together. So
Who
I
doesn't think of New
yeah.
Zealand and automatically think of like some roaring waterfall though, for real?
Oh, I
Um,
know.
just as soon as you say it to me, I just think of this giant waterfall just trickling down, washing everything and cleaning and clearing it all out. And water is such a good element to associate with the heart because, like you said, you just got to keep cleansing it and keep it clean and pure.
Oh, 1,000%. Now, to finish up, I want to first bring us back to Well, our favorite slide of this whole presentation, and then I want to talk about Olympic grade Lurkus comments. Do we have any thoughts on how the chakra lines? Do you mean the chakra points, or do you mean ley lines? How they affect crystals and their area of origin, like moldavite, for example. Is there something about the region it's found that makes it more powerful than any other tektite? Well, we know that crystals can be charged, so it makes sense to me that it would be charged by the ambient energy that is in its point of origin. So, I mean, I think that's um, that's just my off the cuff top thought. What do you think, Georgia?
Definitely is going to be directly tied with the areas of origin. So think about it like if you go into a crystal store that isn't really a crystal store and they sell you some knockoff item and it's not actually like a piece of quartz or it's not actually what piece of material they claim it to be, it's not going to have those properties. I mean, you could charge it, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to drain really quickly and you're going to have to keep doing it. So you're kind of fighting the element. Obviously, if you get something that is directly from a powerful area, I think that that's going to be closer to its natural state of being. You're not going to fight a lot to get it to do something that it shouldn't be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and by the way, word to the wise, if you do pick up a crystal that wasn't as advertised, try to figure out what it actually is and make use of its native energy. Even if it's something simple like glass, that still has magical properties you can draw upon. It'll be so much easier to do that than to try to force it.
To do something that it's not
Yeah,
supposed to do, I promise.
I,
And
I,
younger to the craft people make it's more or less a money thing, right? Like it's
yeah.
here, it's cheaper than what I would get from a crystal store or a supplier, and
Mhm.
that's how a lot of us get got. So just
Yeah.
throwing that out there.
Oh, and one other thing on crystals is that when in doubt, just get yourself some clear quartz, any kind of clear quartz. It is a universally useful stone. You can put it in place. It has both projective and receptive energies. So whatever you need it to do, you can get it done. So especially with everybody's budget being so crunched these days, if you can only afford to get one thing, just get your quartz. Now, cleanse it regularly, charge it regularly, take care of your tools, treat it as nicely as you would your pet or even your spouse. Treat these things with respect. You're trying to use them
Look
for magic,
local.
yeah, and look local. But yeah, get something that's multifunctional. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
I guess that's my sermon on crystals for the day. uh,
Which
so
goes
we
nicely, goes
Yeah,
nicely. It
yeah, it
hangs
does.
in the balance. It's all good.
So, we've gone all through our infinity loop. We've talked about the interplay between the masculine, the feminine, the elemental, and the chakra points. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up with people before you go? Or is there something you'd like to say to kind of sum it all up? Or a thought you want people to kind of take with them and chew over?
I just really want everybody to be a little bit more aware of how their environment influences them on a daily basis. Because, yeah, we talk about how people influence us and how we can get crystals and spells and
Mhm.
colors and do all the things. But are we really aware of the positions we put ourselves in? And are we really aware of the energy and distinguishing it coming from where we are or who we're around? And
Yeah.
Amanda, the selenite is amazing. I don't know if where is it back here? You can see it on my
Oh,
table in the back. It's the big ginormous pillar over there. I
it's
keep
so
it in the
pretty.
back again to keep this space. It's very open. I know a lot of people don't really understand this, but when you open like your camera and your space and your energy and your aura, even online, that negative energy can come in. So that is my beacon barrier. It takes all of that negative, nasty stuff and kind of directs it right back over there, and then we take it in out into the moonlight and we cleanse it under the full moons. So that's my little protection pillar in the back. It keeps all of this out there.
Yeah, and on that note, guys, whatever screen you have, whether it's your laptop, your tablet, your cell phone, your television, regularly cleanse and create magical barriers. You will have a much happier, peaceful life. And also, especially when we take in so much information, and especially if you're thinking over current events, political matters, or anything where there's people who have a very definite agenda and they want you to think or react in a particular way. When you have those barriers, it's much easier to be insulated from all of that crap and to be able to make your own independent assessment and remain clear-headed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it is overlooked. So since we're talking about unblocking our chakras
Mhm.
and coming into a higher consciousness, be aware that these things are putting you at risk as well.
Yeah.
Your phones, the people, it's going to expose you to the same type of energy as being in the room as these people. So keep your
Ooh.
spaces clean, keep your crystals near, get yourself a good Puritan friend who doesn't mind buying you crystals.
Also, be mindful of your mirrors. I got to thinking about that while you were saying stuff. Be mindful of your mirrors. Mirrors are also portals, and
Yes.
if you have things that go bump in the night that aren't friendly, also when you're thinking about cleansing and protecting your home, make sure you take care of all reflective surfaces, including your mirrors, because that's a nice, handy doorway for them. It's not an obstacle. It is an invitation. So just be careful, guys, and listen to your
Good
Auntie
tip.
Mitches. We're trying to help.
That's right. And we're scatterbrained, so sometimes those thoughts don't come till the very end.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, in fairness, I mean, we've been covering a really broad topic. I mean, you could do a 4-hour podcast on each individual point that we've discussed, let alone, the dragon lines, let alone anything else. This is a huge conversation. And I hope, if anything else, people can see that there is structure to how this works. You can relate that to the energetic structure of your body. And when you're doing your own reflections on this, try to correlate the two to help you understand it. Everything that we are given at the small scale, that is essentially a key to help us decipher things on the larger scale. So, when people talk about, oh, you already have the answers within you. I mean, yes, you do. You just need to know where to look and what context to put things into.
Got to be able to walk it out. That's what I say, and the best way to do that is just to keep walking. Just walk your path every day and put more on top of it, and two and two together, and be open-minded. That's, the best advice that I think I could give to the people.
Yeah, I mean, and be open to those unexpected connections. I mean, and by making connections, it isn't about trying to squish everything into one thing and say, oh, well, this is all the same stuff. No, it isn't. These are pieces of the puzzle. And, because human societies developed very independently, everyone put their own spin on things, but you can find underlying correlations and you can make use of those correlations within your own spiritual context. And that's your journey to walk, and record your journey and then share your journey so we don't leave future generations of pagans in the position that we were in. Pay it
And
forward.
feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Georgia, I think we better let the people go before their brains explode and before, we have more stuff just, pulsing out of
Randomly
our
come
heads.
about.
Yes.
Yeah,
All
I
righty.
understand.
Where can people find that delightful book you've just published? Where can they find that?
Oh, I would really, really like it if everybody would go to Barnes and Nobles. We did, my co-author and we decided to do a digital version, and we have a paperback version, trying to keep that cost low for everybody. So you can get either or at barnesandnoble.com. There are other, ebook providers. There will be a link that I will pin. Well, I won't pin it, but I will put it in the comment section of this particular video so that you can use the link and use the preferred provider that you like. I know that everybody's about brand power these days. The book is Mr. Big's Magical Guide to Gambling. It's not going to teach you how to gamble, but it is going to express the necessity to using proper magic when gambling, because everybody knows about that pesky rule of three and nobody likes to use magic for personal gain. But we took a new perspective on it and really want to assure you that you can use magical gambling techniques with confidence, and people have been using it far into the past. I found it a very interesting book to co-author. I think that you're going to like it. So I will put a link to that in the comment section, but you can also go to Rumble or YouTube or Twitter. And the only place that I have a different name that I'm not Wiccan Conservative is Twitter. It's under Liberty Wiccan. I don't know how I didn't get Wiccan Conservative on Twitter, but I didn't.
I know,
So.
right? Who got there before you? That's what I'd like to know.
Somebody beat me to the punch on that one. So Liberty Wiccan at Twitter, but Wiccan Conservative on Rumble and YouTube. And you'll be able to get links to the book and other content and see the other collaborations that Brigantia and I have also done in the past, because everything is there for posterity's sake. And we highly suggest you go take part in those discussions as well. They are doing a little bad on YouTube.
Yeah, they are doing us. They are doing everybody dirty on YouTube. It doesn't matter if you have 1 subscriber or a zillion subscribers. YouTube does. I don't think YouTube likes its users. That's the impression. I'm kidding. But in addition to checking all that stuff out, leave a comment down below. Let us know if you'd like us to do more of these conversations in the future, what conversation topics you'd like us to discuss, because what Georgia and I really like to do when we get together is connect the dots, take what's known, what has been established, what people have talked about, and take that next step, move the conversation forward. We don't need to be, paganism should be the least stagnant spirituality in the history of ever, because it's all about, that ongoing flow of time. So let us know about maybe things you're curious about, maybe, just whatever. Let us know if it resonates with us. We'll see what we can do with our schedules and try to make that happen for you, because sometimes it is just good to talk shop with another witch. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Give Georgia some love. Again, YouTube is giving her the business. I'm not having it. So check her out. Give her subscribe, give her likes. Just let YouTube know that they're not the boss.
We're not going anywhere.
We are not going anywhere. And, it takes a lot of small creators and not just big creators to make a platform worthwhile. So remind them that everybody matters, whether they like it or not. But thank you guys for staying with you. I don't know how many of you have been here through the whole 2.5 hours. But if you have, much love. I should send you cookies because that's
digital cookies. We're sending, but not the tracking kind.
Yeah, we're sending cookies of love, cookies of energy. But thank you very much. Thank you to the 22 people who are currently watching. Appreciate you so much. Again, leave your thoughts, leave your reactions, leave your suggestions of topics that you think aren't being talked about, but should be. And we'll see what we can do for you there. But yeah, that's it. And bye, guys.